You're listening to In Bad Company. Today's guest is Amanda Moore. Today we talk about her journey into mental health field. We dive into EMDR. What is it? How does it work? How does it look for Christians who want to use that and explore that option? And it's a really awesome interview where we also talk about IFS, something that's very new to me, and just the journey of how Christians look at counseling, biblical counseling versus licensed counseling. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode. Please join me for my guest, Amanda Moore. How did you get into like therapy in general, I guess? Was that like a calling for you, or how did that happen?
It's been a long path. I knew that once I first took my first psychology class in high school, like, I absolutely loved it. I loved learning about the brain and just kind of human behavior. So I started out going to school for psych, didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I was working in ABA. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
No.
but mostly just it's like behavior interventions for at the time I was working with kids with autism. And so I really enjoyed that, loved that population, did that for a long time, and was gonna go get my master's for that. And then just kind of like right I was already signed up for classes and everything, and, I kinda told my friend, like, "I have this confession to make, like, it's kind of embarrassing, but, I've always thought about being a therapist." And she was like, "Why is that embarrassing? Like, what why wouldn't you do that if that's something you wanna do?" And I was like, "Oh, I could do it, right? Like, I could just go to school for that." So it was just kind of yeah, it was a shift from, what I knew all along in, the ABA world to kind of applying more of a cognitive, like, learning more about thoughts and feelings rather than just behavior.
Was there any type of like hesitancy with like counseling because it's like, oh, I need to have everything together or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you that's kind of the expectation going in is and I hear that from, lots of other people who talk to me about wanting to be counselors too, is like, "Well, you gotta have it figured out, right, before you can help other people," and, that's just an impossible standard for anyone to have, to expect yourself to kind of be there before you can counsel.
Yeah. So what would you say to your younger self, like questioning that right now?
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Like, I think about, when I was in undergrad and even when I was in grad school, there was so much I didn't know. Even when I was graduating and still, I mean, I see just continuing to grow and continuing to learn. And I can see how I've become a better clinician the more that I learn. And it's never just suddenly you know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, I'm assuming it's always learning, right? You're always kind of
Yeah.
on that path, and that's cool. So I guess to me, it really started finding interesting. I'm a big proponent of counseling, mental health, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I think there's been a big shift. I don't know if you experienced this. I mean, I feel like we're both living in the U.S., but such different cultural,
Right.
vibes. I've felt like mental health has become more recently over the past couple decades, like very like, oh, most people go to therapy or do that kind of. Do you see similar things like that? Is it more of a newer thing in your area, or is it a staple, it's been around for a while?
Oh, for sure. I would say it's a lot more recent. I think even when I was first, like in undergrad, I was going to counseling, but at the time it was still very much, I didn't tell anybody because I was embarrassed that I was in counseling. And that wasn't too long ago. But now, of course, it's, so much more normalized. But even within that, I think there's still a lot of nuance because there's a lot of communities that still kind of look down on it.
Have you kinda seen any of that pushback personally, like, since you've started practicing?
Yeah, I think different circles, especially in faith, because I am a Christian counselor. And so most of my clients are Christian. And I think that there's a big divide, even just within the church where some people are still so against counseling. And, it really grieves me to see that. But it's true. And it's something that, a lot of my clients feel ashamed of, having to get help from somebody else rather than just praying about it and just having enough faith and being okay.
Have you seen any of the like somebody who says they're going to biblical counseling versus like licensed counselors? Have you come up with anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that a lot. And it's something that a lot of churches offer, biblical counseling.
Mhm.
And what that means is, it's not something that is regulated. So anyone can say that they offer biblical counseling. And I don't think that it's inherently wrong. I think that's kind of what pastors do, right? They offer like pastoral counseling. But it's also important to remember they don't have the education to know how things like trauma, for example, affect the brain or the body. And sometimes the work that they can do in biblical counseling can be really damaging if someone isn't trauma informed and they're offering counsel to somebody who has experienced, significant amount of trauma.
I think it's yeah, it's interesting because as a Christian, I feel like we should all like, oh, it's biblical counseling. Yep, that sounds great. Let's just do that. But there is like, why can't it be both? Why can't they be a fully licensed counselor and it can be through a a biblical lens? Um, yeah. So I love to kind of dig into the EMDR stuff because I was brand new to this, and I literally when I looked it up, I feel like I started seeing anti-Christian stuff about it, just being like, "Oh, no, don't do that," and so let's get kind of started with like what is EMDR?
Yeah, so EMDR is a type of trauma therapy. Stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a lot. So EMDR works better for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And so basically, what it does is it takes the memories and the events throughout your life that have been stored incorrectly or they've been stored with some kind of heavy emotion attached to them. And it gets that processing system working again so that it can store them the way they need to go. Kind of like if your brain was a filing system, it's storing things away properly so that they're not attached to that heavy emotion anymore.
So does it start based off like particular events kind of thing that might have caused trauma?
It can, and this is where it kind of varies a lot based on the person. And so we always want to make sure that the person we're working with has the resources for whatever we're doing. So if they've had, very traumatic upbringing, we may not go to those super heavy moments first. We might start with some of the more recent ones. But for a lot of people, you are starting from the younger days and I think a common misconception is that, it's only for like the big traumas, the big single events. But for a lot of people, it's actually things that happened. Maybe they were smaller things, but they happened frequently or they happened, throughout a long course of time. Things like neglect or having parents that were always working, being overlooked, those kind of things.
Do people come to you specifically for that type of treatment, or is it kind of like as you're counseling, you recommend something like that?
It's both. Now I'm seeing a lot more people who are coming to me specifically asking for EMDR because it's getting so much more recognition. Now there's, a ton of celebrities who talk about how they're doing their own EMDR. But even just, a couple years ago, people weren't asking for it. People didn't know about it. So I think it's really cool to see that people are learning about it and that they're advocating for the kind of help that they want.
It seems like you're pretty pro this treatment. Would that be correct? Yeah.
Pro, for sure, yes. I've seen so much good come from using EMDR with my clients, and I've seen them overcome things that they never thought that they would be able to move past, things like panic attacks, which can be really debilitating, trauma, just how it helps in their relationships. Yeah, I've seen the good.
No, that's awesome. Without like obviously I know you can't say anything personal. Is there any kind of vague example you could give us of something that's been like overcome or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think panic attacks is really one of the most like people can see it, especially if you've experienced panic attacks before. You know how debilitating it is. I mean, people go to the hospital for panic attacks because they think they're having a heart attack, right? And it really can stop anyone from driving. A lot of times people are afraid to drive or, they've had car accidents and so they're afraid to get behind the wheel. And So it's really those kind of things that maybe it didn't start there, but the fear has kept them from doing a lot of things that they would normally want to do.
Yeah, that's just it's really interesting to me because like I said, I had never heard about it, and I heard, like, another podcaster talk about it, and, it was even funny. They gave an example of his wife was talking to someone, bringing up, "Hey, my husband's starting to do this," and the reply was, "But you guys are Christians, though. Like, how can you do that?" Like, have you seen pushback specifically about EMDR from Christians?
Thankfully, I haven't personally experienced it. I have never had
Mhm.
anyone come to me and tell me, that I shouldn't be doing it or whatever the case, but I've definitely seen, articles and things like that, or people who are very vocal online about how Christians shouldn't do anything other than the Bible. But I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things where maybe earlier in my faith walk, I would have been maybe more hesitant, or I would have, doubted if it was okay. But I think where I'm at in my faith and also where I'm at in my clinical understanding, I can see how God is working through this modality in the room with my clients.
That's really cool. It seems like something that would be maybe even more of like a is it like more of a focus of like what is going on? Can we rewrite that part of trauma?
Yeah, I think it just comes from a place of fear. People are afraid of things that they don't understand. And rather than trying to understand what's going on, they jump to, well, that's not biblical. And that's really not, we're not called to
Mm.
make decisions out of fear. It's okay for us to learn. If you don't know about something, it's okay to say that you don't understand it and learn more about it. And then you can use your discernment to say, is this okay for me to use? Or do I have a personal conviction about it? Which is different from,
Yeah.
is it sinful or not?
That's powerful too. Yeah, just find out. Like honestly, even when I first heard about it, I was like I had no idea. And so it does seem like EMDR sounds kind of like spooky. Let's
Yeah,
see, like,
yeah.
it's like, oh, you're making your eye move and everything like that. And just like, and then your trauma's gone. I'm like, okay, let's so who would you say it's for primarily?
Yeah, so it can be used for lots of different reasons. And I would say a lot of people come to or they're seeking out EMDR therapy because they are noticing things like triggers or they're being activated by certain, let's say, people, relationships, certain places, like, "Oh, I can no longer go to this place." It can be anything really, even things like smells or certain sounds can make you feel that feeling of being afraid or triggered or whatever it is. And so if someone is experiencing that kind of, debilitating anxiety or even depression, things like that, and of course, trauma is a big one, but a lot of people don't really label it as trauma because they think like, "Well, it wasn't that bad, I didn't get hit, so my childhood was pretty good." But then we go back and realize like, "Well, it you're right, it wasn't that bad, but there were a lot of things that stuck with you and that you learned about yourself that actually don't align with your beliefs or your values or even what scripture says about you."
Yeah, that's really powerful. I've definitely said that same phrase myself, and like, my it's like, "Oh, I didn't get hit, so I think my life was pretty good," you know?
That's the standard, that's the bar, right?
Yeah. Which is it's pretty low, to be honest, right? Like, we can raise that up, like, a little bit, so
We can raise it up a little bit, and it's not to say that no, you didn't have a good childhood. Like, you could have had a really good childhood, but
Mhm.
also if let's say you learned something like, "I'm a burden," right? Let's say you had really busy parents or you had, a lot of siblings growing up, and then you learned something about yourself, like that you're a burden. Then how does that affect your relationships as an adult if you're going around with that belief that you're a burden? Or even your relationship with the Lord. If you're thinking that you're a burden, you're probably not going to go to him for a lot of things because you don't want to bother him.
That's really powerful too. I'm also like, "Okay, I shouldn't turn this into my counseling session," So it's like, "Well, I think when I was a kid," Um But I love too, like, I feel like this is really I think mental health is so important. I hope people listen to this too and get more, like, inspired to try something like this. I'd love to kinda dig into, like, what it actually looks like, in practice, but, What do you say, just as a vague outline? I'm not trying to get you to diagnose anybody, but from,
Yeah.
oh, I have a little anxiety to I have extreme panic attacks. Where's the line in there? It's like, oh, EMDR might be something for you.
I would say if it's affected your life in any way, like it's stopping you from being able to do the things you want to do or have the relationships you want to have, it's worth trying.
Hmm.
And it's not that it's limited to only the big stuff. No, absolutely not. If you're struggling with something, it may be coming back to these beliefs that you hold about yourself or these patterns that you've learned, and it can help with that.
Wow. So everyone who's like, I deal with that kind of stuff.
Everyone
I should give it a
can,
try.
yeah. Yeah, and there
Hmm.
are certainly people who, may not want to, and that's absolutely fine. There are lots of modalities out there. This is just one modality that I've seen be able to help a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was that open. I think sometimes too that's how we treat, especially how we treat something like marriage counseling. It's like, well, I'm
Mhm.
almost getting divorced. I should probably get marriage counseling, but
Yeah.
how much better that can be if it starts earlier. Um
Exactly.
so what is EMDR? What does that look like in an actual session?
Yeah, so this can vary. Obviously, the biggest difference is like, are you in person or are you online? And so today it's much more common to be online. My practice right now is fully virtual. So all my clients are, at home and we're on a screen, but you're using some kind of bilateral stimulation. That's the part that's what makes it, it's called EMDR or eye movement because it was traditionally started with moving your eyes back and forth. And that's why people get the whole like, oh, it's spooky thing. But it's actually just activating both hemispheres of your brain, both sides of your brain. So that can be done with eye movement, but it can be done with other methods too. So if you're wearing headphones, it can also be audio. So it's alternating the sides that you're hearing it on. If you're in person, sometimes people will use little tappers that they have in their hand, and so it's alternating buzzes in your hands. You can also do something like a butterfly hug where you're doing taps like that. So you're just kind of getting that movement on both sides of your body.
Hmm.
And what it does is get that reprocessing system up and working so that you can store that information from where it has been, that hasn't been serving you, to where it needs to be.
How does that process start of like getting rid of, I guess, those feelings?
What you're doing is you're looking at those either if it's a memory or a certain season, let's say a season of your life that, this was coming up a lot, you're revisiting it so it gets to the place where you desensitize it because your brain has kind of visited it enough that it brings the charge down. So right now you may have something you think about that, every time I think about it, it just makes me mad. Or every time I think about that person, or every time I go around that place, I just like, oh, it just gets me so worked up. But the more that your brain is processing that, it just kind of goes down, down, down till eventually it's like, oh, yeah, I don't even know why I was so mad about that, like, I think it's okay now, and it's so funny when it gets to that point of it's a little weird at first. I always tell my clients, like, "It's a little weird." And, they feel that too, but then it gets to that point where they're like, "Oh, yeah, I don't feel as mad right now as I did, like, 2 minutes ago, and I don't know why."
Hmm. It's training you to kind of let it go. Is that a good way of saying it?
It's kind
Like
of
it's
like
not
making
forgetting it or blocking it, I guess, but
No, no, absolutely not. You can still remember it, but whenever you think about it, it's just not bringing up the same feelings that it did before you desensitized and reprocessed the information.
and I understand why too, like even hearing that if someone could be like, that does sound spooky. I'm sure it's weird for people, but like it's also kind of weird like how when we sleep our eyes move like that too,
That's exactly it. Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly what's happening is your brain is processing information as you're sleeping, which is the rapid eye movement.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing. It's just that we're inciting that. So when you sleep, it happens involuntarily, but we're doing it voluntarily.
I feel like that is such a good kind of sign. It's like, well, that's what our bodies do anyways. That's how they reset. That's how they do that. We're just trying to get it to do that, and
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Um, what are people's like misconceptions about it coming in?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think the biggest misconceptions is one, like you just said, like, am I gonna forget it? That's one. Another one is that will it bring up more memories? Will it bring up things that I've repressed? That's something that people wonder. And it might help you remember some details of like, oh yeah, like I remembered this part too, but for the most part, it's not really bringing up something that you didn't even realize that this really traumatic thing happened, because your brain does a really good job of protecting you when it needs to. And we also don't push more than a client is ready. So we're not digging for information. We're just looking for exactly what it is that your brain brings to mind, and just kind of signals to you this little this part here needs some care and attention.
Yeah, it seems very focused to me, which is kind of that feels cool too because I feel like sometimes counseling or suggesting counseling is just hey, just go in and fix everything in your life. You know, I guess seems so like open ended. So that's cool how it does seem to be like more focused in that.
Yeah, it can be, and it doesn't have that same um, kind of like effective. Some people go to counseling, they go to traditional talk therapy, and they're kind of bringing up all their trauma and talking about it, and then it just kind of gets them in the feelings again, but then they don't really resolve it, and that's because it's still stuck in their bodies, and talking about it doesn't do the same thing that something like EMDR, where you're reprocessing the information, where it brings that kind of comfort and that safety back into your body.
Are there any like negatives? I mean, obviously understanding counseling is a road, stuff takes time, but like is there any like negative things that you've seen from it?
Yes, I have, and I think it depends on there's a lot of different factors to consider. So one, even just with the movement itself, eye movement, I get migraines sometimes, and so I'm sensitive
Oh.
to visual things. And so I had to learn the hard way that I was not a good candidate for the visual eye movement. And so thankfully, because I have that information now, I do always tell my clients if you have any kind of medical conditions, migraines, things like that, make sure you let your therapist know before you guys decide on a modality, or if this modality is right for you, um, just so they can be on the same page and keep that in mind, for you. And then making sure that your therapist has the right training and qualifications, that it's hopefully not a biblical counselor, but it is a licensed therapist. For me, I like to refer to people who have a certification in EMDR, which means you've gone beyond the basic training and you've sought consultation. And it's a more advanced version than just having your basic EMDR training.
Hmm.
And to me, that just assures that the therapist is ready, because sometimes people try to dig in to things that clients are not ready for, and it can just put them in a state of, fear, panic, anxiety. And that's the opposite of what we want.
So if I have a pastoral degree and I watched a YouTube video on EMDR, I probably shouldn't perform it.
You
Is that right?
absolutely cannot. You are not ready for that. And there's a governing body over EMDR. It's called EMDRIA, and they are the only ones who can say who can give this training. So therapists have to have a training that is approved by EMDRIA, and then the certifications and all of that that also goes through EMDRIA, the governing body.
No, I wasn't gonna try. I was just gonna.
I'm glad, but no,
um,
I do want people to
yeah.
know that it's okay for you to ask about your therapist's credentials, because you wanna make sure that, um, that they're right therapist for you, that they can help you.
We talked about a bit, but I do feel that is a huge that's something I'm very passionate about in the Christian search circle is people are like, yeah, we're going to counseling because our marriage is struggling or something, but we're going to go to this, this biblical counselor. And I feel so wary about that because I mean, like what kind of biblical background is that? Are they trained to just preach on Sunday morning? Are they trained
Right.
to, all that. So, yeah, I was curious, like, what's your perspective on that?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not totally against it because I know that everyone needs help. And if
Mhm.
everyone kind of could only go to a licensed therapist, well, I mean, everyone's wait list would be full for years, right? And people wouldn't get the help that they need. So I'm not against biblical counseling. I do just think that it's good for the counselors themselves to know their limits and know when they need to say, this is beyond my scope of training. And I think maybe at this point you do need to see a licensed therapist.
Yeah, I guess I see the issue as like it almost feels like that's the same level, like a licensed counselor versus a biblical counselor. When it's like we can get wisdom from people who've been Christians for so much longer than us, or something like that. So like it's not even a wisdom thing; it's a okay, but there's a vetting process to being licensed, and there's the test. I've heard about the test. It sounds pretty intense.
The test for to become licensed.
Yeah,
It's a the test itself is difficult, but what's really the refining process is the supervision that you receive. So for my license, I had to have 3,000 hours of supervision before becoming fully licensed.
dang,
And for a biblical counselor, they can get a certification in one day. And it's not quite the same,
right?
bachelor's, master's, 3,000 supervision hours, and the licensing exam is not quite the same as logging online and getting a certification in a day.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that they can't offer wisdom, but it's important to know that they are acting more like a mentor, a spiritual mentor, than they are a counselor.
Yeah, yeah, one of my buddies just got, like, officially licensed, and, yeah, he had, he did it in our local town, but then he had to have, like, a camera, like, set up in the corner that was, like, over his shoulder the entire test, and I was just like, "Wow, that is," which is good. I mean, yeah, that is so intense. Um, that's good. I feel like you have a healthy perspective on that because I feel like if I was a licensed counselor and someone showed me their one day of training for biblical counseling, I'd be a little upset.
I know my limits and I know the limits of all the counselors around me. And as much as we'd love to help everybody, we can't. And so I think it's great that people can find help in their church or in certain ministries. I think that's wonderful and that's needed, but it's not the same as counseling.
Is there anything that I'm missing or you want people to know about that in general?
Well, I mean, I think it's okay to get curious about EMDR or any kind of therapy modality. You can always talk to your counselor about it, and we're all about doing what's right for you. I think for the most part, counselors love when clients come in and kind of advocate for themselves and ask questions. You can try it, and if you decide, you know what, this is weird and I don't like it, tell your counselor. We appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, that's cool. It's not a, "Oh, I'm on this track now. Oh, I guess that is another question because I know once again it's probably a variety, but is there an average or is there like how long something would be or like how many EMDR sessions?
That's it. That's definitely an it depends answer.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
depends on the client, it depends on the target. But it is significantly less than some other therapy modalities, like, for example, cognitive behavior therapy, which is the most popular. It's been the most popular, pretty much until recent times when other modalities are coming up. And I'm not even gonna say the figure because I'm not remembering it right now, and I don't wanna say the
Yeah.
wrong one, but it was a significant difference between people who were going to EMDR and got to the place where they found enough relief to graduate from therapy versus people who were going to your traditional CBT therapy.
Yeah, like I feel like I've never heard about it before and even just within this year I've heard it from several different sources. So like that's cool. That's growing and it seems to be really doing a lot of good. So, are people able to so you do all your counseling and EMD. Oh my gosh, I even forgot. EMDR. I'm new. I apologize. Uh uh are people able to do that through you like over video chat?
Yeah, so I'm licensed in Texas, and most counselors are licensed within their state. And as far as in the US, they're licensed in their state. And so the client has to be physically located within the state.
Oh, okay.
So, I can't counsel people outside of the state, and that's important for other people to know. If they're searching for a counselor, you want someone who's licensed in your state. But there's also things like intensives, which is something that I offer and some other people offer. And so some people might actually come into town or into the state to do intensives so that they can see the counselor. It's not a long-term relationship, but maybe it's 2 or 3 days where you're doing a short-term intensive.
Are you comfortable? Can I put like your Instagram or something there so people can like reach out or find about those intensives?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Instagram is Good Christian Therapy,
Okay.
and that's where I talk about EMDR is one of the modalities I practice, and IFS, maybe that's the next one you can learn about. And that
Yeah.
one has a lot more controversy in the Christian world. So,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
but
Do
yeah,
you want to dig into that for a little bit?
yeah, absolutely, we can.
So, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so IFS is called Internal Family Systems, and this
Okay.
one is a lot more recent than EMDR. So it's just kind of getting its footing right now. It's been it's been great. I'm currently going through the training right now, and it is very intense. It's 14 days spread out over the course of a couple of months for just level 1 training.
Wow.
And this is why I think it's so important to have a Christian counselor because there is a level of sort of like translating that's going on because the model itself is not Christian. And there are aspects of it that I wouldn't share with my clients, but I'm making those switches as needed.
Wow. So you're kind of like almost like pruning what you would not be open to or what you don't want to push from people.
Exactly. Yeah, and so basically the premise of internal family systems, it's all about what's going on within you, or the conflicting parts. So, I'm sure you've said it. I say it all the time. People say it all the time, like, oh, part of me wants this, but a part of me wants this. And so it's talking about those parts, the different parts of you that come up through various events in your life, relationships, things like that. And just kind of bringing them the healing that they need. But what the model would say is that it's yourself who brings the healing because it suggests that yourself is kind of perfect, doesn't need any help, those kind of things. And so obviously as a believer, I don't subscribe to that belief that we can heal ourselves, that we are, all knowing, powerful, whatever. So to me, I kind of changed that to, okay, I'm not the healer in here. You as the client, you're not going to heal yourself, but we do have a healer who we know can help with all of these things.
Wow. Yeah. So you're really the I don't even know how to describe that. You're really like the funnel of like kind of correcting this for people you want to work with.
Yes, and this is one that I do hear a lot more controversy even within counselors, um,
Mm.
who just kind of dismiss it altogether. And I personally don't take that approach because I think there's a lot of wisdom to be found in even things that don't come, even things that come from the secular world. We can still find a lot of wisdom from it when we accept the truth and we, put aside everything else that isn't true, that we know doesn't align with our beliefs.
Yeah. Hmm. What is the controversy you're hearing then? Like, what are people's kind of like specifics, I guess?
Yeah, so because of this, the self, or you may have heard it referred to as like inner child work, things like that. I've actually heard people say like that it's the occult and that it's just demonic, all of these things, all of the big scary things that Christians like to do. And to me it just kind of it makes me sad to hear that because I know how it's really helped people, how it helps so many Christians that like I work with and I know they love and serve the Lord and they need help, and it's not, I don't think it's right to put down, something again just because you don't fully understand it.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing of that. So that is really interesting. And that's gotta be really difficult, like being that person who's like, hey, maybe we can still do this.
It is hard. especially when the church feels divided on something, it's not something fun to kind of be on the opposing side.
Yeah.
Um, but that's why everyone has their own discernment, and I think it's important to remember when your discernment is telling you something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or wrong for somebody else. That's up to them to pray through and make that choice on their own.
Hmm. I don't know why, but it did remind me of just Christians' different belief about like Halloween, that kind of stuff, and how like I really don't believe you can accidentally worship the devil by handing out candy. Like that's an intentional thing. And maybe you have different beliefs on that, but um and it seems like that kind of similar thing where if we are praying about it, if we are using our discernment and the Christian community in general, which is hard when it's divided, like I feel like we can discern that truth, you know? Um, and that's really cool that you're doing that. I mean, it's like, oh, it's super fun to do something no one's done before and then a church divided.
Yeah, that lots of Christians are against. It's a very popular podcast right now that's talking about how somatic therapy, which is, IFS does somatic work,
Mm.
is is of the occult, and just
Wow.
you have a when you have a platform, like, you have to be mindful of people are listening to this, and people who are maybe brand new to their faith are gonna take that and run with it and say, like, "Okay, maybe I shouldn't go to counseling. Maybe I shouldn't get help because it's the devil," instead of them being able to recognize, like, it is something to pray through, and I would encourage anybody, pray through this modality. If you're going to go to a counselor, pray before you go to a counselor for any decision. You don't want to just make decisions blindly. It's good to be informed. It's good to feel like you have peace about things, but that doesn't mean you need to go out and tell everyone that everything they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, like kind of like what you said earlier. I really like that about not doing it out of fear or running from it and just like look at it, pray about it, like
Mhm.
even if you believe something is like an occult or something that's a bad practice, like I guess like look at it, fully look at it and like pray about it. I think it'd be a very, healthy thing to do. And wow. Wow, that's interesting. So IFS, I'll have to do some more research on that because I've
I
once
think you'll
again.
enjoy it. It is
Yeah.
amazing, and so I actually blend the 2 together, blending
Hmm.
EMDR and IFS together, and it is amazing.
Yeah. That's
It
cool.
is it's so much fun, and it brings so much growth and breakthrough.
That's cool. So like what gets you fired up about IFS then or the mix of those two?
EMDR, the way it's structured, it is very structured, and, IFS is a lot more fluid. There's a lot more, flexibility, and so when you kind of blend the 2 together, it's the best of both worlds. So you get the flexibility of IFS looks absolutely different in everybody because everybody has their own parts, and then you get the structure of EMDR where we're kind of all following the same steps.
Hmm. So is that done by yourself or would you ever be with like those families? Like
So
those
the
family
it's
members?
the family is within yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So a good example of
You're
that, so you
saying it's in my heart.
it it's even within your mind, right? Your
Okay.
mentality, the way you think through things. Anytime you're having an internal battle, IFS would say like there are different parts of you that are
Hmm.
active.
Okay, so then it's kind of just focusing on that strain through EMDR. Is that kind of how that works then?
Yeah. So if let's say there's a part of you that feels like back to how we talked about the burden, um, we would be focusing on like that part of you that feels like a burden. And that can kind of help too when someone feels like um I like they're consumed with anxiety, or like I hear this now, and this particular phrase I'm not crazy about, but when people say I'm anxious, I'm an anxious millennial or whatever, they kind of like accept that label as who they are. But IFS would say there is a part of you that is anxious rather
Hmm.
than, you as a whole are anxious.
I mean, I even like the sound of that just for helping me to process that. Like, that's not defining me.
It does, yeah. That
Mm.
helps a lot of people to recognize, like, oh, it's not that I'm, or like if someone's experiencing, let's say you're experiencing jealousy or something like bitterness, that no one likes holding those emotions. So when you can look at it like, okay, there is a part of me that's feeling this way, then you can kind of get curious about, well, what's going on? How did this part even get there? And then it just kind of helps you to have a little bit more compassion and realize, okay, we're all struggling with these fleshly things. How do we get the help that we need with them?
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I'm like, I'm speechless just because I'm like, that is such an interesting way to look at that. And I feel like, yeah, well done. Well done. Good job. Good job doing what you're doing. So,
Yay, I'm totally on a new modality.
yeah. Yeah, I think I think it's so dangerous too. And I think there also is a bit of laziness in us when we say things like, "Oh, I'm an anxious millennial." It's
Mhm.
like, no, let's put in the work and get rid of the root of that, you know? And I feel like that is also saying, "Hey, don't beat yourself up. Don't own that label, but look at where it's coming from and like
Mhm.
let's let God in and let's get you healed, you know?" So,
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, to sum it up, we all kind of struggle with these different thoughts and feelings. We all struggle with different kinds of sin, but we know at the heart of it, I'm a child of God. I'm chosen, I'm forgiven, and also I'm struggling with these things.
amen. Well said. Um, well, awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being on, for being a guest, and just it was super fun just to dig into this stuff with you. So really appreciate you being on today.
Yeah, yeah, it was so great to chat about these things, and I really hope that this helps someone.
Yeah, definitely. And would you like to shout out your husband's podcast that he does real quick?
Yeah, so he does the audio for Gutsy Faith, which is a wonderful podcast where it's focused a lot on ministry. They talk about Bible stories and how that can be applicable to daily life. And yeah, it's been so awesome.
That's sweet. Yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll look it up, or maybe you can send me a link, and I'll be happy to put that in the show notes as well. So
But
awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks again for being on.
yeah, thank you.